Welcome, everyone. Welcome to Griffin's Tale. This is the first of a series where we learn about the stories of the people of Northshield. And tonight we have Shava. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Of course. As Your Majesty said, I'm Shava. There's even a trademark on that sometimes. But I'm Viscountess Elashava Riva. I was 13th Princess of Northshield. At one time I was Baroness Yara Vettler. And somewhere along the line I got a laurel and a pelican if you're looking at alphabet soup. But mostly I'm just Shava.
It's great. And you're also a bear of Northshield.
That too.
Right. And for those of you who aren't Northshielders, that is given out once per reign to people who embody the spirit of Northshield. And you were given it to by Katie and Cassandra.
I was.
So we're going to start this out like most of these interview shows start out is how did you start in the SCA?
Well, I found about 40 years ago, I found a household of people that seemed to have like interests. They were definitely geeks. They were more gaming geeks than I was, but it kind of all falls together. And so I ended up moving into a house that had, regular D&D games, that kind of thing. But a couple people that were kind of fringe SCA, and ended up going to my first event with some of my housemates, and it kind of felt right. And gaming never really did, and science fiction fandom, which was also something that was big in our crowd, was okay, but I read other things. But the SCA seemed to embody my interest in history, and it attracted really cool people.
Cool. And have you always been a part of Yara Vettler?
Yes.
Yeah. You've never been belonged to any other group?
No.
No.
I've been adopted by a couple of groups, but never really. I've lived in two kingdoms, but I haven't moved.
Right. So what was the SCA early days of SCA like in Yara Vettler?
We had just come off, the barony itself had just come off of a period of time where there were 3 or 4 major couples and their families, and then lost like 3 of those couples. And so a number of people had just moved in. The man I ended up marrying, Giles, had moved in and had played a little bit down in Illinois. Our seneschal at the time had just moved, was ready to move himself, and Berdai, who became our first queen, ended up as our seneschal for the first 5 years I was in the SCA. And that worked out really well because she owned the local game shop, which meant that sometime during the month, almost everybody wandered by. So business got taken care of just kind of, organically. It wasn't big, but we had interests in a lot of different things. Music was an interest of many people early on. Master Thorbjorn's household had had available to us a lot of different tools and things, and along the way they decided that there was too many interests to have like a guild for everything. So they started having Tuesday night whatnots, and a whatnot was just a chance to show up at their house, and if you wanted to do lapidary, you mentioned it to them ahead of time, and they unearthed the lapidary equipment. That might mean they had to cover up the forge to get to it. But there was a forge, there was a loom, there was equipment, there was a 10,000 volume library, and there was a chance to just sit around and talk. And so we did that, kind of weekly. Dance practice ended up there after a while. And we were just, naturally social. We did a weekly or a monthly potluck, and that was our one meeting in Garb. And, hang out at people's houses. My favorite potluck was the one where we had about 13 people there, and we had 12 desserts and chopped liver. Those are the things I remember from the early days.
Dessert and chopped liver. I think I would have ordered some pizza.
but we worked, we had fun. Mostly we worked well together. Though after a while, some politics came into play, and for a while that became pretty nasty. And
Mm.
they're not the things I like to remember, but they are some of the things that formed us.
Mm-hmm.
There was a lot of influence of the Great Dark Horde in those days here, and a lot of the influence of the people that didn't like the Great Dark Horde, which was part of it.
So I don't know much about the Great Dark Horde. Did they start in Wisconsin, or was that kind of
No,
a?
it started in Michigan.
Uh-huh.
The Nauseating was the first Kagan, and you probably know him by the name of Robert Aspirin.
Okay.
And it's actually the household. Let's see, the Great Household of the Dark Horde, not the Great Dark Horde. And the idea originally was that they thought the Middle Kingdom was getting to be too serious about itself, and they were starting to do infighting among themselves. And so Yang thought that if there was a foil for them to play off of, it might make it easier for them. So they set themselves up to be the foil. And sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't.
Hmm.
And they're still around in whatever incarnation it is these days. Giles and I were part of it for a while. But there came a time when it just wasn't working for us anymore. So we wandered away and figured our family would always be our family, but we didn't have to call them that anymore. That kind of thing.
Right. So you got your laurel in dance, is that correct?
Yes.
And
Not
so
quite sure. I'm not quite sure why some days, but I love dance and I love to teach it.
right.
And I would go anywhere to teach dance. Whether that really deserved a laurel, the laurels at the time thought so. Crown at the time thought so. Whether I thought so, Rosenor was my laurel. And I got to admit that
Rosenor, okay.
Yeah. And the day she begged the boon, I tried to escape out the back of the tent.
So what event did you get put on Vigil at?
Second Dub.
Okay.
Vigil and the ceremony. It was kind of a strange day. I was standing as a regional seneschal for court in the morning, and that's when Rosemary came up to beg the boon. Well, it just so happened that that was a big day for the history of Northshield, because not only was the boon begged for me, but also for Cassandra of the Western Green for Laurel, and Anne Jeffries of Warwick, and Jeffrey of Warwick for Pelican.
Oh wow, that was a
And
big
so
day.
all four, yeah, it was a big day. And so the good part was the fact that those people were recognized, and the bad part was somebody decided we should all sit Vigil in the same tent.
Oh.
Yeah. I had to admit that I was probably heard to say sometime after that if anybody was ever silly enough to give me another offer me another peerage, I wanted my own Vigil.
It's only right and proper.
So a number of years later, that happened, and I got my Vigil. That would have been, let's see, it was Boar's Head in 04. So 16 years ago this weekend.
Oh wow. Happy anniversary.
Oh, happy anniversary of the kingdom too, since I was the first person put on Vigil for a peerage.
Oh right, yeah. The very first person.
Yes.
That's really cool.
First person put on Vigil, first person to become a peer of the kingdom.
And your elevation to Pelican happened when?
Boar's Head.
The Boar's Head. Okay.
Yeah. Like I said, I wanted time, but I was put on Vigil at first coronation.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Do you want to talk about that at all, or?
Have you heard this? Have I told you the story?
About your pelicaning?
Yeah. Well,
I don't think so, and I wasn't around during that time, so I probably wasn't there.
Well, it was kind of a strange thing. Okay, so Siegfried, who was our first king, is my SCA grandson.
Mm-hmm.
Berdai, who is our first queen, was there when I walked in the door. So they've been friends, about as long as I, have known them, known. I mean, Siegfried started in the SCA here when he was 17, and so I think I was there when he walked in the door. And so as we're coming up to the first coronation, I was doing everything I could to help them. I live pretty close to where they are, and I was doing things like bringing them, homemade TV dinners so they didn't have to eat fast food every night while they were trying to get ready for first coronation.
Mm-hmm.
And the Wednesday before the event, Siegfried sends me an email. This is long before chat or Facebook or anything like that. And he said that he wanted to do something special for Berdai, that she was working so hard to, get this kingdom thing off the ground. And he had this great idea that he wanted to do something special for her at the end of the court. And who am I to deny my grandson anything, right?
Right.
But there's also a little part of me in the back of my mind going, should I trust him? Well, yeah, I kind of have to. And so he came up with this idea that we would do this debate. I'm like, debate? Yeah, don't worry. I mean, we can make it really good. Why don't you contact Fisk, who at the time was Principality Seneschal, and, see what you guys can come up with. Okay, sure, why not? Now, Fisk and I both had jobs where we could, email pretty freely during the day. So we did. We just started emailing kind of furiously back and forth and coming up with an idea. And we finally came up with this debate that would, because I was set to become his successor shortly after we became a kingdom.
Mm-hmm.
So we were, coronation was in October. I was set to become Kingdom Seneschal in January. So we decided the debate would be whether I was worthy to be Kingdom Seneschal or not. Okay, we can come up with some thoughts. So we did, and came up with a short script. And I brought it to fighting practice that night and showed it to Siegfried. And Sieg's like, oh, yeah, this is great. Oh, she'll love this. And he's giggling. And okay. And I'm walking away going, I trust my king. I trust my king. I trust my king. Not really sure whether I should be doing this or not. But here I am. Okay, so we get to the Shire of Silver and Mirror a few days later, and we're the night before we're getting things set up. I actually got to sit in your throne and wear your original, your crown before they became regalia. It was kind of fun.
Yeah.
But so we're getting, and that weekend was a whirlwind. We had people coming in. We had royalty coming in from 6 kingdoms. We had all of the mid-realm royalty, so all 4 of them. We had our last prince and princess, Rhoda and Julia. We had our incoming king and queen, Siegfried and Berdai, and then representatives of, let's see, Eldamir, Palantir, Outlands, and Anstiora, I believe. And so there was, all that protocol to get, work around and all sorts of things. And then the high emotions. I mean, we were, giving up a lot as far as some of us were concerned. I've been mid-realm for 25 years, so it was hard. And I remember Viscountess Astrid and I just bawling when we watched the original thrones coming off the stage. That was hard. And we make it through the day, and there's, the morning court seemed to last forever, but again, high emotions. And we had like the last mid-realm court and our last Northshield court and our coronation and, their first little bits. And then we broke for lunch. And then there was a laws court and a gifts court in the afternoon. But they ran simultaneously because we were nice to our incoming crown and said, that's what you got barons and baronesses for. They can listen to the laws. I really like that idea. Mm-hmm. So that happened. And then, we had another break, and then there was evening court. And all the things happening in evening court that you have, there's, the gift, the gifts had already been done, but there was creating all the new orders and awards and everything, and signing the White Scarf Treaty, which was true history, because we had the Queen of Anstiora there to do it with. And,
cool.
And they had not Siegfried and Berdei had not, shown their hand at all, and nobody knew whether they were going to sign until it happened on stage
Oh, wow.
during court. And so we get all the way to the end, and finally Siegfried says, "Okay, I've got this problem. I need a debate champion. And called me up, and so I went up there, and I set up note cards for Fisk and me, and so we had our little lines, and we were going back and forth, and finally I proved that I wasn't going to make a good Kingdom Seneschal. And Siegfried is just, I'm busy giggling with Berdei, saying, "Oh, you're just going to love this." I'm still not seeing what's happening. I'm really not. And so Siegfried just brings himself up to his full height, and it's like, "Master Fisk, how can you let this happen? How can you have somebody that isn't going to be worthy to take your job as your successor? What are you going to do about it?" And Fisk says, "There's only one thing I can do, Your Majesty." He drops to a knee and he says, "I beg a boon." My first words to Fisk is, "You're dead." To Zig, "You're dead." I can't say that to Berdei, but I can say that to my husband, who's now stuck up behind me to catch me. "You're dead." I was the first Northshield gotcha in front of 1,500 people, and I wrote half the script.
Nice.
That's how I went and became was put on Vigil for the first peer of the kingdom.
That's really cool.
Yeah, I think it is kind of in a way.
And was your elevation just as special?
I think so.
Yeah.
Well, you'll never hear me use the word elevation, but
Right.
I always say it's a ceremony because it's a recognition.
Mm-hmm.
But I had some problems coming up with who do I ask to speak for me. I know a lot of people at this point. I've got friends all over. I respect so many different people. And then it came to me, wait a minute. Our first prince, David of Golfmai, was a peer of the realm, was a royal peer. He was a laurel. He was a knight. "Hey, David, can you speak for me at my ceremony?" "Sure. What do you want me to speak as?" "All of them." And he did. He got up to speak as one, and then when they asked for the next, he sat down, he popped up again, and then he popped up again. So other than the fact that they had to sew me into the skirt in the back of court while it was going on, because the usual wardrobe failure.
Right.
But yeah, so I thought that was very special, and the fact that, and then I had asked Ingrid the Crafty, who you might know. She's a merchant and artist. She's also a bard, and she had written a song called "Chivalry," which always has meant a lot to me. And I asked her to sing that as the words of the populace for me, so I would remember it. I also used the lyrics of the song for my first column in the North Watch when I became Kingdom Seneschal.
Oh, cool.
They were words I really wanted people to believe in.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I'd say it was special.
Yeah, definitely. So then, as one of our first Kingdom Seneschals, what was that like?
I got lucky.
Yeah.
We had an incident at the first coronation that did cause us to banish a person.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Fisk and their majesties took care of that. By the time I was, sworn in, all of that had been finished, investigated, went all the way up to the board of directors like it's supposed to. And because there were no charges filed and nothing else had come of it, we were able to drop the whole thing. But
good.
we had to follow all the procedures. So we started off, as a kingdom with, we've got bad paperwork to do. But by the time I stepped in, yeah, it was fine. And other than some, a little bit of internal squabbling, it really was I've always felt it was kind of a honeymoon period.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things I wanted to do as King of Seneschal was to be the antithesis of the Mid-Realm Seneschal. Because I always felt that when we were part of the Mid-Realm, nobody saw or knew much about the Kingdom of Seneschal unless there was a problem in your group. What I tried to do was to get to as many groups as I could during my tenure. And because I felt if they knew Shava and not the Kingdom Seneschal, then it would be easier to deal with things because they could contact me before the problems got worse.
Right.
And for the most part, that worked really well. The other was trusting deputies. I especially for our groups out west, I don't always understand some of the thoughts out that way. And so my deputy out there was somebody that I don't always agree with, but he knew the people. And that was Storm.
Mm-hmm.
So you can imagine that having him as my deputy out there made it easier for me
Right.
because he understood what was going on out there. So that helped. And we were able to get a few groups that had been, quote unquote, incipient forever to full status. And to make it important, which was something I really wanted to see done. When we were part of the mid-realm, a group achieving full status was just kind of perfunctory, when it could happen.
Mm-hmm.
They used the words incipient, and they even got into the point of calling groups proto-incipient. And I hated that. So did Fisk. So the two of us came together and came up with the idea of calling them forming groups and doing everything we could do to help them be successful. And then once all their paperwork was taken care of, to be able to say, this is important, as important to your group is as a peerage is to a person. And we should make this very important in our courts.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when we started, having gifts and cake and, charters and all sorts of things to make the groups realize that their hard work was worth something.
Mm-hmm.
And I think those are the things I can see as successes to my tenure, is that and the fact that people could know me. I think I made it to all but 3 groups during my 27 months as Kingdom Seneschal.
Mm-hmm.
And I like to think that helped. Unfortunately, I did pass, something happened just as I was passing the baton on to Catriona, and I proceeded to find her a good selection of beer as a gift after I stepped down, because she inherited something that I didn't have to deal with. And I'm glad I didn't, but she did.
Yeah.
So that's what it was like, at least for me.
Was it exciting to kind of be Kingdom Seneschal during the early days of the kingdom?
I think so. Duke Raito once put it that some people get off on knowing things or doing things, that Shava gets off on knowing things. And so being Kingdom Seneschal is to be in the middle of knowing things.
Yep.
And if I don't know those things, then there's something wrong.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, I like to know things. I think it's one of the reasons that I was willing to go on to taking kingdom offices after, another kingdom office after that.
Mm-hmm.
And also, be in on working on the North Watch, or, whatever. I've been a deputy kingdom web minister almost since the beginning.
Yeah.
Just because, it's nice to be able to help, because I know a few things around the edges.
Well, yeah, it's important to, kind of maintain those people who have that institutional memory, and they can remember, oh, we've already worked on that, or we've already faced that problem. Maybe you should look at it this way. Those are, it's good to have those people around to kind of point out the potholes.
Yeah, I gotta admit, there's, there are times on Facebook that my eyes roll and I'm going, are we dealing with that again?
Mm-hmm. Sadly. So we haven't really talked about when you were Princess of Northshield. Do you want to talk about your reign as Northshield Princess?
Sure. My prince was the man who is now Duke Raito.
Mm-hmm.
He came to me one day in his usual, I won't necessarily say cocky, but sure of himself fashion. It's like, so do you want to be princess? not can I fight for you or anything like that. And it's like, sure, that sounds like fun. And he only had to try twice for me. He got it on the second try. And he pointed out to me one day that, you do realize that I'm doing all the hard work for this. And I looked at him and I said, sure, you'll get me the coronet. I'm going to earn my Viscounty. And I had a couple of goals in mind when that happened. And I like to think that I took care of the things I wanted to, and then we were able to do a couple of other things.
Mm-hmm.
What I wanted to do was to shine a light on the bards and give them a better venue. So I had asked that there be concerts, at any event I was at. And even if I was the only one in the audience, it was a chance to give them more than just late night around the fire. We also tried to take that kind of entertainment out of feasts because, one well-known bard once said to me, yeah, the only thing, singing at feast is like singing at a wedding or a funeral. They're not really here to, for you, they're here for something else. And so we tried to emphasize other times that you could do bardic. I also wanted to see the youth more involved with the arts and sciences. And I didn't want to see them necessarily having to compete against adults. But yet at that time, we didn't have enough, kids to, do like a whole kids competition. So I always wanted, something else set up for them. I wanted like another table that they could use the same, ideas. Like if it was a bean count, that it would be bean count for the kids. If it was prize tourney, that there'd be prizes. But they always got a chance to meet with me after they had shown whatever they were doing and after I had a chance to see it. And that they all got a little certificate of participation. And they all got a kit. I asked people to help me put together kits to do other arts and sciences so that each kid would go away with something else to do. And so, like, if, there was one young man up in, I believe it was Miriam Athistidum, who had done a very nice illuminated dragon for me. And so his gift for me was I gave him back the dragon, and I gave him a calligraphy kit. And I said, here, you go see what you can learn about calligraphy, and I want to see what you do sometime. He used that opportunity to write me a thank you note on that dragon, with that dragon as the illumination. Nice. And I still have that.
Awesome.
And we had also, Gevahard put together a cartography kit, so they could learn how to make maps. Elion made a whole bunch of Kumahimo kits, so there was always something to give them, so they'd have something new to learn. Mm-hmm. And I really enjoyed that aspect. And the thing that we didn't expect to actually get done, but we did, was the day we were stepping down off the throne is the day that we presented the paperwork to the Mid-Realm to go Kingdom.
Oh, cool.
Before we had started, we had what was called the KEG, the Kingdom Exploratory Group. Yeah, KEG. And in many ways, they were created to be an entity without a mandate. Here, why don't you all become this little group, and so everybody will think that something's happening, so you can become a kingdom. But they were not really given anything to, any endpoint, of what anybody wanted to see. Raito and I didn't like that idea. It's like, neither one of us were absolutely sure Kingdom was the best idea at the time. Mm-hmm. But if we're going to do something, we're going to do it right. So we basically shook up the keg a little bit, ended up getting Rodrigo to be in charge of it, and basically pushed them, Raito especially, pushed them to get all of the pieces together so we would, could have this packet to hand over to the kingdom, to the Mid-Realm, to say, we're ready. And if we couldn't get it done, let's just dissolve this. And we did it.
Mm-hmm.
So that, oh yeah, and my other favorite thing for the reign was also arts and sciences related, because I talked the Queen of the Midrealm into coming out and doing an arts progress. Up until that time, we'd had, before we became a principality, we really hadn't seen the Midrealm a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And we had a couple of crowns that were willing to come out and do a royal progress and do like a court a night for like a week all over the principality. And that was really cool. But once we became a principality, we didn't necessarily need the courts for the same reasons. Before that, I mean, recognition out this direction was really hard to get.
Right.
The Midrealm, remember, is Michigan, Ohio, Indiana, Kentucky, Illinois, and then it was all of the rest of us.
Mm-hmm.
That's a lot of space. When Tarek and Fenia, or when Tarek won Midrealm Crown, the event was in Indiana, and Cadian had to point out to them that was 9 hours. He had to travel 9 hours to win that tournament.
Mm-hmm.
And there's still more kingdom past him.
Yep.
And there's still more kingdom past where he was. This is a big area. But by the time we were principality, we started being able to give out some of the kingdom awards. We had our own awards. The recognition was now being given. We didn't need, the Midrealm crown as much as we once did to be here. But we're still part of the Midrealm, and the crown should still be noticing what we're doing. Was
Mm-hmm.
My thought. And so Elise Catherine, who was Queen of the Midrealm at the time, was somebody I'd known before. And I suggested to her that, what about doing a progress to see what the people are doing in terms of arts and sciences? Well, one, she's a very smart lady, and two, she's also a Laurel. And she thought this sounded like a great idea. But she suggested we do this in the summer, because at that time she was still teaching. It's like,
Right.
okay, we can work that out. And the more I thought about it, the more I realized, wait a minute, I shouldn't just set this up for her. I should go with her, because, the princess should be seeing what everybody's doing too.
Right.
So, okay, we'll do that. And I had a lady in waiting that was willing to go with us. John Chandler Greyfeather was also willing to go with us, be an extra driver and helper. And then Tarek won that crown for Fenia. And suddenly we had the Princess of the Midrealm living in Northshield. And it turned out we'd already had the plan, but she could make 4 out of the 6 stops with us. So we were going to have 3 royal, ladies traveling through the principality who were all Laurels. Well, and then just to top it off, Chandler just happened to be recognized as a Laurel the weekend before we started. So we now had 4 Laurels traveling through Northshield to see what people were doing in the arts and sciences. We did, let's see, we started from Dub Dub. That Sunday night, we spent up in Minneapolis just to kind of cool down. And then we traveled all the way up to Rudavale in Grand Forks, North Dakota, down to Border Downs, so Sioux Falls, South Dakota,
Yeah.
over to Rivenwood Tower. They found us a site in Albert Lee's that was pretty close to them. We then went up to Inner Sea, up to Duluth, then back down into Wisconsin to Cantona-Coil-Ster Mail in Tomah, and then all the way over to the Lake Michigan to West Bend to Lubbock-Wheel. So we traveled 1,600 miles in 6 nights or 6 days.
Wow.
I figured out that we saw about 250 people and about 350 artifacts or performances over a course of 6 nights. I saw people look at their neighbor and say, I didn't know you did that. I saw entertainment that included a male belly dancer, a woman who made entertainment out of the etymology of words. I saw a duke who I only knew as a fighter, who had a table's worth of things that included embroidery, leatherworking, woodworking, and jewelry making. We saw everything from soap to siege engines, and that was in one household.
Oh, wow.
It was the most amazing week I have had in all my time in the SCA, and that's, like I said, 40 years. If I could ever sit in your position, I would want to do something like that again.
Yeah, that'd be really cool.
Because it is just so cool to see people excited about what they do.
Mm-hmm.
So I think I had a fun reign.
Very cool. Yeah, I remember some of that, being around for some of that of your reign. Not a lot of it, but I do remember some of it. I remember Raito came to, we were camping at Lily's and he came and hung out. Came for supper one night. I don't think you came to Lily's that year.
No. Oh, that was our June. I think the scribes to this day probably curse that June for, you know, to whatever gods they want to talk to, because it was a 5-weekend June.
Oh.
We did 9 courts between us.
Yeah, I bet.
Yeah. We were both at an event every weekend, and he did Lily's over both weekends.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah.
Let's see. You've talked about a lot of the questions I had for you. You've been part of a lot of Northshield history. Is there any other Northshield history stories that we haven't touched upon?
Let's see. I was kind of the person who put it in everybody's mind to bring the big damn rock out from Shattentor for first coronation.
Mm-hmm.
We were sitting around one night and talking about ideas for that coronation. We were over at Gunther Kegslayer's place, and I said, what would be really cool is to have the rock. And Gunther just lit up and he goes, yeah, I could go pick it up. He probably could pick it up by himself, but the idea just did start that way, and the Shire of Shattentor figured out how to get it moved out so we could use it.
Because you were reigning when we got the rock from the Outlands, is that correct?
I was. Yes, Raito and I were. It was our first event after our investiture, so we were brand new, with our shiny hats. It turned out that the Crown of the Outlands were new at it too, so we were all kind of feeling our way, how to do this. And they came to us and asked if they could do, if we could do a court on Friday night because they had something they wanted to do. It's like, sure, why not? So we called a court in and had them take over, and then they had their Baron and Baroness of Unserhofen, which is Fort Collins, Colorado,
mm-hmm.
Come and for some kind of presentation. And we're like, okay, whatever. And they said, the Baron, was a nice, nice talker. And he goes, here, why don't we take a walk? This is a little different for a court. So we started, taking a walk and following along with this couple and the Crown of the Outlands. And they take us around the big Northshield Pavilion to this box that's sitting in the middle of the grass. And on the box are things like, these modern symbols that were, I think they were radioactive or something like that. It was all mystical type of stuff. And they're, and he's talking about friendship, and he's talking about friendship as solid as stone. And we're not really getting it yet, but they stop us in front of this rock, or in front of this box, and they have a couple people lift it up, and under the box is the stone. Now, if you've seen the stone, but for those that are listening that might not, think about 3.5 feet wide and about 2.5 feet by about 12 to 16 inches thick. It's about 1,800 pounds of sandstone, and on it is carved a griffin. in the center, and some Celtic knotwork around the edges, except for one corner where there's a portcullis that's carved into it. The portcullis being the symbol of both the Shire of Shattentor and the Barony of Unserhofen. And so this rock was created to symbolize the friendship between the Outlands and Northshield, not even the Midrealm, because Northshield, because the year before, someone in Northshield had found out that they were really short on award scrolls, that their backlog was, you know, something tremendous. And I'm pretty sure it was Aya that started the push and was able to come up with like 400 scroll blanks to present to them from Northshield. So they returned to us this rock. And Rachel and I looked at it and said, you know, I think our Minister of Regalia, who was Giovanna at the time, would probably hate us if we bring this home and check it in. Maybe we should let the Shire keep watch over it. It can stay out here.
Mm-hmm.
And so it has. And it, you know, other than the trip to Silver Mirror for our first coronation, it has always been, well, no, I take that back.
Yeah,
we
went to 50 year.
It went to 50 year. Yes. And that was wonderful, because that made a wonderful centerpiece for the Kingdom display at 50 year.
Yeah, I think it got a new trailer after its trip to 50 year, because there was some issues with it where it left, but yeah, it's still in Jadtor. You can go see it. I believe it's at Cecilia's yard, I think. I don't know. I'd have to check to see where
it was used for Orla's laurelling.
That's right. And I think that's the last time I actually saw it in person. And I think there was at least 12 to 15 guys who had to move it off the trailer.
Mm-hmm.
That was quite something. I was certain someone was going to get hurt.
Well, they haven't. It's still
thankfully not.
But I think that one of the coolest things about the rock, besides, you know, being there when we got it, being there at 50 year to see the rest of the known world be amazed at it, was the fact that at our first coronation, there were many things that were not planned that ended up using the rock as a centerpiece. The only thing that was ever planned, from what I remember, was that the new crowns were put on the rock, and that when Siegfried and Berdai were to crown themselves, they were to, you know, kneel behind the rock, looking out at the audience, pick up the crowns and put them on their heads. What wasn't expected was, as each of the peerages were giving up their fealty to the Midrealm, the knights put their chains on the rock. The barons and baronesses all put their coronets on the rock. There were a few too many laurels and pelicans to do it, but the symbolization, the symbolic nature was already there. The rock ended up holding the kingdom in that time, you know, that little bit of veil between Midrealm and Northshield. The rock held it all. And I think that's one of the amazing things about Northshield, is that we have a solid symbol that just is a mythos to the rest, you know, there's so many of us that were there at the time. And hopefully the stories can be learned by other people so that this mythos will create, you know, just continue.
Right.
Even when the rock is dust. I think the rock has to always be that symbol.
Are there any other stories you'd like to share about in Northshield? Anything you can think of?
Not that are sticking out. I mean, we've got so many amazing people.
Yeah.
And there's so much talent and so many moments along the way that are, you know, good and bad. And I think we've survived a lot, and you guys get to survive probably with one of the hardest right now.
Well, in some ways it's hard, and then in other ways, well, during well, you're familiar with traveling through Northshield. It's, traveling, actually physically traveling is probably the most taxing part. And so
It's
not having to actually physically travel is, we don't have to do that. But, the emotional toll, the rain during this, during the pandemic is where the hard work is.
mm-hmm. Well, one of the questions you had in the list that you sent me ahead of time that, who do you, look up to in the SCA? Who stands out? The first thing that came to me was you and His Majesty for right now, because, like you said, you don't have the taxing part of the travel, but you have to find a way to keep this kingdom together and inspired when there's so much that we can't do.
Right.
And there's so much out of our hands in our real lives. When you open, social media and you find out another friend's tested positive, or a friend's lost their parent to COVID, or, so much of this, job losses and, separations. And you're there as a symbol of the SCA to hold us together. I have to admire that.
Thank you.
Very much.
Appreciate that. Is anybody else in the SCA that you admire and are inspired by?
Over the years, there's always been somebody. There's a Eliyahu in the mid realm. Is always been inspiring to me. Davith and Gwyneth as our first prince and princess, having an 11-month reign, and they did the travel. With that. That was amazing. Jeanette recently having to do it all by herself, or Marguerite out in the East where, she had to do it by herself recently.
Yeah.
I can't help but not appreciate how hard that is. Kenna, when Jafar died.
Oh, yeah.
Again, having to do it by yourself, but yet nobody's really by themselves in the SCA. We all have an amazing support group, and it's one of the things I love about it. I'm having a lot of trouble these days with the ESCA, because for me it's the people, and I don't get the the same thing like through the Zoom or live performances. It just isn't the same for me.
Right.
And I've never been big on the classes, so it's great that people can do them, and it's great that people can do them through Zoom or another e-platform, but it just isn't right for me.
Right.
And so I'm not not really doing very much lately, SDA wise, because it just isn't the same. I love the SCA for the people. I love the SCA for being able to do things with, that I enjoy doing, or, while I don't necessarily enjoy the classes, I've learned a lot from people in the SCA. I learned how to weave from Mira Nakano, and, that pulled us together at one time because somebody needed a whole lot of ankle belts done. And she was trying to do them all by herself. And I said, look, just warp a loom, hand it to me, and I bet I can learn how to weave. And that's how I did. And in the SCA, one of the things I tell people at demos, or that, they're first checking it into what we're about, is we're a group where you can keep changing your hobby. You can dabble in all sorts of things, but you don't have to change your friends.
Yeah, we're lucky in that respect.
I think we're really lucky in that respect. So, over the years, whether I've done cooking, gaming, weaving, enamels, stained glass, whatever it's been, dance, there's people that also enjoy doing it,
Mhm.
and I can talk to, or I can share the interest with, or the things that I'm not really, very interested in, I have learned a lot about. And I can look at a scroll, or I can look at costuming and know what's, really hard to do and how good it is. I can look at the trim on your, oops, where are you?
Oh,
I
did I
just
disappear?
lost you.
Oh,
I,
you're still here though.
I am still here, but I can't remember how to find the picture again.
If you click on the video, you must have stopped the video.
Uh,
Oops.
oh, wait a minute. I just saw something that said back to meeting. There it
There you
is.
are.
Yay for electronics.
Technology.
What was I saying? I don't remember.
You were talking about doing stuff and learning
Oh,
things
yeah,
that you.
I was admiring the trim on your
Oh yeah.
garb, and it's not the style I do, but I can really appreciate how nice it is. Or you know, I know somebody that just loves trim. She doesn't do any of it, but she collects it, and that's I love seeing that kind of enthusiasm.
Hmm.
I've often said I would never be a Pixis. I dabble too much. I time travel too much. I've often said I'm an obese Barbie doll. If you want to make good clothes for me, fine, I'll take them. But if we didn't have those people, it wouldn't be the same.
Hmm.
If we didn't have people like Margaret and Edwin, who are the embodiment, to the Pixis for me, almost even more so than the principals are.
Hmm.
Though the principals, are Tarek and Fina are definitely people to hold up and admire. People like Edwin and Margaret who just live it. I mean, Edwin once brought everything he was going to need for the event and had her drop him off a mile outside of sight and only use what he could carry in.
Oh wow.
He did that for a Quest for Camelot, and it still boggles my mind.
Yeah, that's not necessarily my wheelhouse.
No, but how much richer do they make our society?
They make much better.
Yeah. And so I think we need all of us,
Hmm.
because of that. Like I said, for me, it's the people. And, there's a thing going around Facebook right now of, if you were looking for me at an event, where would you find me? Or why would you be looking for me? Or whatever it was. And those things are cool because, for me, I go around just because I want to say hi to people,
Hmm.
get a hug, the things we can't do right now.
Yeah, I miss that a lot.
So do I. But whether we have the people that are super into the authenticity of the Pixis side, or the truly social that's more like me, we need it all to
Hmm.
make it work. And that's what's cool about it. I don't think it's like any other recreation group for that reason. But that's why I'm here. Besides, I can't say no to you.
Oh, no to me. Yeah.
Yeah, for the interview.
Oh, well, I really appreciate it. We're getting close to an hour. Is there anything else that you wanted to talk about?
I can't really think of anything. Like I said, I think I've covered.
Yeah, you've covered a lot of ground. I do have a question. So, what advice would you give someone who's just starting out in the SCA?
Take your time. Look around at everything. There are good aspects of this organization. There are bad aspects of it. Any group of people, it's going to be like that. Don't be afraid to ask the questions, but take your time with it. Don't do something because everybody says, oh, you have to have garb at this level, or you have to already have your persona created by now. You need a name. No, you don't. Just come and take it in, enjoy it. If people start talking politics, run away. Whether it's modern or SCA politics, just run away.
Yeah, good advice.
But yeah, we have a lot to offer. I really think that that's true. But we are human, and anytime you get more than two people together, you're going to have good and bad. So just take your time, ask them questions when you're ready to, but don't be afraid to be yourself either. We've got some amazing new people that I can't stop gushing about some days.
Oh yeah.
But we have some great old people too.
We have a lot
And then
of
we have
great
some
old people.
that can't get away from their old feelings, and we have some new people that just kind of look at us and go, "Why would I want to be part of that?" But yeah, just take your time.
Cool. So the last question I have is, and you probably have already answered this several times, what's the best thing about Northshield?
I think it's because we really do feel like a family. The feeling of kin, the fact that we're more of that Norse kingdom idea of the hierarchy really doesn't matter as much. That when we were part of the mid-realm, I always felt that the crown only really needed to know their peers. They didn't really need to know the people. At least that's the way they felt, and that's the way the people felt, both directions. In Northshield, I think the people in general would feel very bad if the crown didn't pay attention to them, because they feel that it's all a part of the same family. So whether that and I think that makes us strong. I really do. I think that being able to appreciate what everybody's doing and to get together to make sure that happens, whether it's at your level, at a peerage level, or at whoever's scrubbing the pans in the kitchen level. Our dukes take off their shirts to go do dishes.
Yep.
I know that if somebody came and said, "Hey, there's somebody over here that needs doesn't have a scarf," I bet you'd find one for them. Need a ride? Yeah, we'll find you one. Show up at an event with nothing, you'll be garbed, in an hour. Because that's what we're here for. We're a family, and we want everybody to feel the same way. At least I'd like to think that.
Yeah, me too. And I'd like people to, feel that they're part of, the family.
Yep.
Well, that's all I had, unless you had something else you wanted to discuss or bring up.
No, I don't think so.
Okay. Well, I really appreciate you joining me today for our first interview of Griffin Tales. I hope you enjoyed it, even though you don't necessarily enjoy the ESCA.
No, I don't. But
we really kind of, Kieran and I felt that it was kind of during this downtime to try to talk to people and record our history. So it's been recorded for posterity, so the people who don't know our stories can learn them and carry them forth. So thank you for joining us. And I'm not sure who we have on the docket for the next interview, but I hope everyone stays tuned and enjoys this. And thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.